Welcome to our video lecture on SQL. This is the first segment where we'll give an overview of some SQL commands. In the following two segments, we will do some actual examples using Microsoft Access. Please remember this is copyrighted. The first statement we want to look at is the create statement. We will create our tables with this create statement. A simple create statement simply says create table and the name of the table. Then it lists the field names we want to create, the data types for those field names, and any constraints that we have. Here we show that's the primary key, this one cannot be null, etc. We can also use a constraint keyword. In it we can use to set up the primary key and the foreign key. Notice we're creating a table here named employee skill. These are our fields and their data types. With the constraint here, we're setting up the primary key. In this case, it's going to be a composite key, all right? And also we're setting up a foreign key. Notice in the foreign key, we have to reference the table and field that is going to be the foreign key, where our relationship is. We put data into these tables using the insert statement. If we have non-numeric data, we must use single quotes. Numeric data just stands on its own. We insert into the table the values, and then in parentheses, those values in the order of the fields. Okay? We can also insert into a table, depending on how those fields are set up, different fields, not just every one. We can skip a field. For example, we could do employee ID and employee salary code and leave out name, depending on how that field is set up. Select is the best known SQL statement. It retrieves information from the database matching specified criteria, and the basic setup of that statement is select and the field name from the table name, where, and some criteria that you want to match. When we're getting results of a query, we're creating a new relation. It's a temporary relation. When we do this, we're able to use that to even make a subquery. When we're selecting, if we use the asterisk, we select everything from that table. If we use the distinct keyword, we don't select any duplicates. The where clause is how we match criteria. Where and whatever matching criteria we want here. In the where clause, we use the symbols equals, not equals, greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, and less than or equal to. We can also use multiple criteria by using the and the or. Here's an example with or. The employee ID must be less than 7 or greater than 12. Anything between 7 and 12 won't fit. This one, the department ID must be 9 and the salary code must be less than or equal to 23. Both conditions must be met. In the where clause, we can also use the keyword in to specify a certain list of values that we want. We can use the logical operator not to say that we want to show all information except what matches the criteria. The between will give us information in a range of values. The like keyword allows us to search on partial values. We can search on a partial value with a wildcard character for multiple characters or a wildcard character for a single character. In this example, our employee name that we're searching on here, any employee name that starts with KR. Over here, any phone that starts with 616 and has these exact number of digits. We can sort using the order clause. When we order by, it sorts on that field. Subqueries are a query within a query. In this subquery, first we select what's inside the subquery, and then using that relation, we select what's inside the main query. Thank you for your attention. In our next segment, we will work through some actual examples of these in Microsoft Access. Hello, welcome to our second segment of our video lecture for this week. In this segment, we are going to look at creating tables and inserting data into those tables using SQL. We're going to work some examples in Microsoft Access. Okay? The first thing I need to point out is to make sure, it discusses this in your book, make sure that you have changed your Microsoft Access to be compatible with ANSI 92 SQL. To do that, we click on our File tab there, our Options. We go to SQL Server Compatible Syntax ANSI 92. Be sure that you click that this is the default for all your new databases, so that way everything will be compatible. Right now, looking at creating tables, the first thing we must understand is that we can't create a table in any order we want to. We have 3 tables we want to create possibly. We can't just create this employee skill table right now because it has a constraint that references another table. It references the employee table, and that table has not been created. If we try to run this create, it gives us the error that it cannot find the table or constraint. That's because employee has not been created yet. So it's important when we're going to run our queries to create tables that we run them in the order that they need to be. Okay? So let's go and create our employee table. Right, here it is. This is the example that we had in our earlier video lecture, where we're creating the employee table with employee ID, employee name, and employee salary code as our fields, with the data types and primary key, not null constraints. Okay? So we run this, and we have our employee table created. Now we can go to employee skill, run that SQL, and it creates our employee skill table with no problem, because this table that it's referencing has already been created. Right? Now we've got our tables created. How do we get data into it? Well, we use an insert statement. All right, let's go to a simple insert statement. All right, we're going to insert into employee, that's the table name, the values, and then they come in the order of the fields: the employee ID, the employee name, and the employee salary code. All right. If it's not numeric, it must be enclosed in single quotes. Okay, and I understand that putting a first and last name together in one field is not good practice. I'm simply doing it to illustrate the fact that yes, we can have spaces here. Okay, we can have anything we want in between these single quotes. Okay, so when we run, it tells us that we're about to append a row. We say yes, we want to do it. Now when we go to our employee table, there's our data. Okay. All right, now we also spoke, let me close this right quick. We also spoke in our earlier video that we can insert into certain fields of the table, and not all of them, depending on how the table is set up. Okay. If we try to insert into this employee table the employee ID and the employee salary code, it will not work. Why? Because when we created the employee table, we said that the employee name could not be null, right here. So when we try to insert this without the employee name, we're trying to create a record with a null value in the employee name field, and we get an error. It tells us we're about to append a row, but then it says we can't do it. Okay, so we have to be sure, if we're going to pick and choose what fields we want to insert into, that we have those fields set up correctly. I'll make one quick change here and make a different table and run it and show you how changing that. We'll run this employee 2 table with an employee name that can be null, and now when we insert into it those 2 fields, it allows us to do that, and our employee 2 table now has just the employee ID and the salary code. Okay. All right, this concludes the second segment. In our next segment, we will look at the SQL to search and retrieve data from our database. Thank you for your attention. Hello, welcome to the third segment of our video for this week. In this segment, we are going to be looking at the select statement and using it for data retrieval, how we're going to get our data out of our database. I've made 10 different select statements here. In this segment, we're going to look at 5 of them, and then following this, there'll be a 4th segment where we look at the other 5. Okay, I've tried to make these select statements as close to those in the first video as possible so that you have a reference point to go back and forth. Okay, I've created a couple of small tables here, the employee table and the department table, and that's what we're going to use in our select statements in both this segment and the 4th segment. Okay, so let's get started. The first select statement, the most simple select statement, is where we're selecting everything. To do this, we use the asterisk. We say select asterisk from employee, and the employee being the table name. We're telling it which table we're selecting from. When we run this, we have all the information that's in our table. It retrieves everything that we've got. Okay? Now, sometimes we might not want to retrieve. We might want to retrieve every record, but maybe not every field. We can do this with a very slight tweak to this SQL. Instead of selecting asterisk, meaning every field, okay, we are going to select, let's say, employee ID and employee name. Now when we run it, we'll get every record. However, we're only going to get the fields of employee ID and employee name. Just so. We have every employee ID and every employee name. Okay. All right. Now looking at our employee table, notice in our employee department IDs, we have all the department numbers that all the employees are in. And obviously there are more than one employee in certain departments. Like here we have 1, 2, 3 in department 112. Okay. Well, let's say we want to, through this employee table, get a list of all the departments that have an employee in the employee table. But we don't want to list 112 3 different times. That's when we'll use the distinct keyword. Okay? When we select distinct from employee department ID, right, then we will not pull out duplicate numbers. Okay? It will only pull out unique numbers. So when we run this, we get a list of all the departments that have an employee. But we don't, like 112, there were 3 of them. We only have the 1 for 112. Okay? Alright, suppose we don't want to get every single record. Okay? Suppose we want to get certain fields and certain records. Alright? This is where we're going to use the the where statement in our select, the where constraint in our select statement. Okay. In this, we have where and then some criteria that we want to meet. For example, here we're going to select the employee name from the table employee where our department ID is 112. We want to get those 3 employees where the department ID is 112. Okay. When we run it, that's what we get. Okay. Of course, we want more than just the employee name. We can add other fields. We want the employee name and the employee ID. And we get the employee name and the employee ID. But all of these are only department 112. Okay? Now, we can also select multiple criteria by using the word and. Okay? Using this keyword, we are selecting employees where the employee ID is 112, and we want another criteria, this employee salary code is less than 15. This will cut down on those. There we go. Instead of having the 3 out of employee 112, now we just have the 2 whose salary code meets our criteria. This ends the 3rd segment of our video. Please join me for the 4th and final segment to finish up our select statements. Thank you. Hello, welcome to our 4th and final segment of our video lecture for this week. We're going to conclude our select statements in this segment. We'll be covering 6. I didn't quite make it to 5 in the previous, so we'll have to cover 6 in this one. And we're going to start using the OR operator. We ended up the last one with the AND operator where both criteria had to be true for the record to be selected. The or allows us to choose if either this criteria is true or if this criteria is true. Only one has to be true for the employee name to be selected. So if the employee department ID is less than 110 or if it's greater than 200. When we run it, we see that we have gotten those employees. When we look at our employee, we can tell that we got those that were less than 110 and greater than 200, which are the 101s, the 212s, okay, 110 there, not the 110s, less than 110. Okay, and that's what we got right here, okay. All right. We can also select things in some sort of list, all right. If we want employees who are in certain departments, we can stipulate a list in our where statement, our keyword here, using the keyword in. All right. In this case, we only want those employees in these 3 departments. When we run it, that's what we get. Just employees in those 3 departments. Okay, just a subset of our employees. Now, we can also add in, if we want somebody who's in every department except those 3, we can add in the keyword not. The logical operator, actually, technically. All right. Got in the wrong place. Not in. Okay. And when we run it, we'll get all the employees that are not in those departments, which is only 3. Okay. The logical operator not can, shorten our list considerably. Okay. All right. Now, we can go to the between keyword where we want to get things in a range. Okay, we know we want everything between these 2. Okay, so we can say between some value and another value. All right, when we run this, we're going to run employee name, and we want to get the salary code too, and this is showing you what it's getting. I want to make a point here between 12 and 15. So when I run it, here we are. We have salary codes between 12 and 15. And what I wanted to show you was, notice we do have 12s and 15s in here. The between is inclusive on those beginning and ending values. Okay, it is an inclusive, including the beginning and ending here. Okay. All right. Let's look at the like keyword. Okay. We want to get a group that is all similar in some way. Okay, we want all the employee names who start with KR. Okay, this is an example in an earlier video, in an earlier segment of the video. Okay, so when I run it, we should get Kramer and Kreitz. Okay, so we're using the wildcard character %sign here, which means everything that starts with KR and has anything else after it. And when we run it, that's exactly what we get. We get Kramer and Kreitz. Okay. All right. What if we want to sort our information? Okay. We want to use the keyword order by. All right. We want to get all of our information from this table, but we want them sorted in alphabetical order by employee name. So we select everything, but we order by employee name. And when it runs, we get them ordered, Allen, Bunn, Grant, Johnson, Jones, alphabetically. Okay. Order by is a very important one. It can order alphabetically. It could order numerically. Okay. We could possibly order by employee ID, as you can see here. And then it's ordered by employee ID. Okay. Finally, I want to look at a subquery right quickly before my time runs out, which is a query inside a query. Okay. We have a select query here inside the where of the select query here. This will run first, and then this will run. And when we run it, that's what we come up with. Okay. Thank you for your attention. This is the end of our video. Goodbye. Hi. I wanted to add one little short portion of the video here to make a better explanation of subqueries. I didn't quite have time to explain those adequately, I didn't feel, in the last segment, and I just wanted to take a few minutes and explain those a little better. A subquery is a query inside of a query, okay? we have this as our subquery here, where we are selecting the department ID from the department where the department name is like a %mark. That's our wildcard character saying we want department name that begins with an A and then has anything else after that A. Okay. What's going to happen, this subquery here where we're looking at the department table is going to execute first. We're going to go to the department table, find those department names that begin with an A, and then from that set of names we are going to look and find the employee name and the employee department ID where that department name is in the set of departments that began with an A. Okay, if that makes sense. This department query works first. From its results, the query from the employee table works next. Okay, so when I run it, okay, I get these 4 employees, okay, in departments 112 and 110. And when I look back at my department table, that's why I have such small tables so we can show you this. When I look back at my department table, we see that department 112 is accounting, begins with an A. Department 110 is administration, it begins with an A. Okay, so we had those. We did not have anyone in department 120, advertising, begins with an A, but the reason it did not show up is because none of our employee IDs, employee department IDs, I'm sorry, were in department 120. Okay, so we can see that department 112 and department 110 are the departments that we had employees in that began with an A. Okay, that is how a subquery works. I just wanted to make sure I had a better explanation of that we work this one first from its results, then we work this one. Okay, thank you for your attention on this little addendum. Goodbye.